Dragging my exhausted body after the night shift, I passed through the hospital's automatic doors. The July morning sun was dazzling, making me squint. I got into my old Honda parked in the lot and started the engine with practiced movements. The smell of disinfectant had permeated the car's interior. I'd been working as a nurse at the same hospital for 10 years. Though it can be tiring, the patient's words of a thank you keep me going. Yes, their smiles are what drive me to continue this work. When I arrived home, I noticed my mother's Mercedes and sister's BMW in front of the entrance. The sight of luxury cars lined up fit well with this quiet residential neighborhood. But my old Honda seemed out of place. "I'm home," I called out, and heard movement from upstairs. It was Grandfather William. I hurried up the stairs. "Grandpa, are you awake?" In the dim bedroom, Grandfather was sitting on his bed. Sunlight filtered through the maple trees in the garden, gently illuminating his figure. "Good morning." His response was vague. My grandfather, a former professor of English literature, was now thought by everyone to have dementia. But the occasional sharp look in his eyes had always bothered me. "It's breakfast time. I bought bagels today." I gently supported his arm as we slowly made our way downstairs. In the living room, my mother Patricia sat on the sofa in expensive yoga wear, peering at her smartphone. My sister Jennifer was taking selfies. Neither of them looked up when we entered. "Rachel, stop walking around the house in that cheap nurse's uniform." Mother frowned. Beneath her perfect makeup, disgust seeped through. "What would my Instagram followers think?" my sister added. She apparently had over 100,000 followers. I quietly guided Grandfather to the dining table. The portrait of Grandmother Margaret on the wall silently watched over us. 5 years had passed since Grandmother's death. This family had changed dramatically since then. Mother had become successful as a luxury real estate agent, and my sister had made a name for herself as an influencer. But I felt that truly important things had been lost along the way. While cutting up Grandfather's bagel into small pieces, I wondered, how could Mother and Jennifer treat Grandfather with such disregard? They treated him like a nuisance, despite his lingering traces of the intellectual professor he once was. "Rachel, it's time for his medication," Mother said coldly. "Thanks, I know." As a nurse and as a granddaughter, I had been taking perfect care of Grandfather. But was this really my role? This question always swirled in the depths of my heart. As I wiped Grandfather's mouth after breakfast, I looked up at Grandmother's portrait. Looking at her photo with its gentle smile, I asked in my heart again today, "Grandma, am I doing the right thing?" One day, when I was completely exhausted, I had planned to use the few hours until my afternoon shift for a nap. Just as I was about to lie down on my bed, a phone call from Mother shattered that plan. "Rachel, family meeting tonight at 7. You must come." Mother's voice had its usual arrogance, but mixed with something unsettled. "But what about Grandpa? William? Don't worry. He should be asleep by then. You must come." The call ended abruptly. As I put down the receiver, I was enveloped in an ominous feeling. When Mother called him William, it was never a good sign. I gathered in the living room as instructed. Mother and Jennifer sat on the heavy leather sofa. This sofa, chosen by grandmother, still maintained its new-like shine. By the window where maple-filtered sunlight streamed in, grandmother's beloved houseplant stood covered in dust. Mother was dressed in the latest yoga wear, while Jennifer was dolled up in an Instagram-worthy flashy dress. They both sat with straight backs, like audition judges. Only grandmother's portrait watched over the scene quietly as always. "I have wonderful news for everyone." Jennifer was the first to speak up. She took out her latest iPhone and turned the screen toward us. Her manicured fingertips danced across the screen. "I've received a special invitation from the Four Seasons Hotel in Hawaii." Mother placed her hand on Jennifer's shoulder with a beaming smile. The sweet scent of Chanel perfume wafted through the room. "Jennifer, this means your influence as an influencer has been recognized." "Wonderful. I know. A week in a luxury suite. Ocean view, with a private pool." "Of course, Mom, you're coming with me, right?" I silently watched their exchange. In my chest, an indescribable anxiety began to swirl. Outside the window, the evening sky was gradually darkening. But what about Grandpa? "Oh, Rachel," Mother cut me off. A cold light dwelled in her eyes. Her expensive eyeshadow reflected the fluorescent light with an eerie glow. "You're a nurse, aren't you? As a professional, surely you can take care of him for a week." "That's right," Jennifer agreed. "It's something only you can do." There was an ironic ring to those words. Her smartphone camera seemed to be already searching for compositions for Hawaii swimsuit photos. "Besides, you can get someone to cover your night shifts, right?" Mother's words rang like an established fact. Her voice no longer held any trace of the gentle mother who used to counsel us. "Wait a minute," I tried desperately to maintain my composure. I could feel my nails digging into my palms. "This is too sudden. The hospital won't easily let me." "Rachel," Mother's voice grew colder. "You're just a caregiver, so quietly take care of grandfather." Those words pierced deep into my heart. I desperately held back the tears welling in my eyes. I unconsciously gripped tightly the afghan that grandmother had knitted. "That's right," Jennifer added brightly. "We'll make sure to create fun times for you too. I'll send lots of photos from Hawaii. I'll post daily on Instagram stories, so watch when you're free." The two were already excited about their travel plans. Luxury spa reservations, shopping, sunset cruises. Their voices sounded like distant noise. The air in the living room felt like it was gradually growing heavier. My gaze turned toward the stairs, to grandfather's bedroom. The family's history and memories should be sleeping quietly there. Even now, the smell of old Western books lingered in what was once the study of grandfather, who had taught English literature. Mother and Jennifer immediately took out their smartphones and began booking flights. The sound of expensive Louis Vuitton suitcases being brought out, voices discussing new swimsuits, everything felt like an unreal dream. Their occasional laughter broke the house's quietness like dissonant notes. "Rachel, we leave the day after tomorrow morning," Mother announced finally. "I'll leave a week's worth of William's medication. Meals and everything else, well, you'll manage. You are a nurse, after all." I nodded silently. I had already lost the energy to argue. The fatigue in my neck was finally catching up with me. As I watched their excited figures disappear up the stairs, I turned my eyes to grandmother's portrait. In her gentle smile, I sensed a somewhat sad shadow. And then, I heard a faint sound from upstairs. As if someone was secretly listening. I quietly clenched my fist. I could feel sweat seeping into my palm. I had a feeling this week would be the beginning of something. I didn't know what yet. But there was one thing I was certain of. I was the only one who could protect grandfather. And perhaps that was what grandmother had wanted. Day 1 after Mother and Jennifer's departure. By sunrise, I had already started preparing grandfather's breakfast. I had applied for a week's leave from the hospital, and surprisingly, it was approved without issue. I was grateful for my colleagues' understanding. "Grandpa, it's breakfast time." I gently opened the door to grandfather's bedroom. Morning light softly filtered through the lace curtains. "Thank you, Rachel." I stopped in my tracks at his clear response. His voice was completely different from his usual vague reactions. Grandfather sat in the armchair by the window, holding an old leather-bound book. His appearance reminded me of when he used to teach at the university. "That book. It's Shakespeare's King Lear." Grandfather's voice was surprisingly clear. The tragedy of an old king who couldn't understand his beloved youngest daughter's true heart. My hands trembled. The tea in the cup on the tray rippled at the edges. This didn't seem like a symptom of dementia. "Rachel, sit down." Grandfather closed the book and motioned to me. "I've been waiting for you for a long time." I sat in the chair next to grandfather. The morning sun was gradually brightening the room. "Actually, I've been acting all this time." I caught my breath at grandfather's words. Acting. I knew those two were after my assets. Grandfather's eyes held the sparkle of his former intelligence. "Patricia thinks I have dementia." That was my defense strategy. I was at a loss for words. What was happening before me didn't seem real. But why? "You've seen it, haven't you?" Grandfather continued calmly. "How obsessed those two are with money. Their vain expressions on social media. Luxury cars. Designer brands." Grandfather stood up and took an old leather binder from the bookshelf. "Look at this." Inside were the house deed in grandmother's name, along with detailed asset inventories, bank statements, and the latest will. "Margaret, your grandmother, was a wise woman." Grandfather's voice softened. "She foresaw where this family was headed." I opened the documents with trembling hands. Grandmother's meticulous handwriting was neatly arranged. "This house actually belongs to Margaret. Her will determines the next heir." I caught my breath. The documents contained unexpected contents. But Mother. Patricia doesn't know. She's trying to take control of the assets by exploiting my supposed dementia, but the actual rights lie elsewhere. Grandfather opened the hidden safe in his study. Inside were contracts with lawyers, grandmother's diary, and... What's this? What was handed to me was an envelope. Addressed to Rachel. In grandmother's handwriting. Dated 1 week before her death. "Open it." Grandfather's voice gently urged me. Inside the envelope was a long letter. Tears flowed from my eyes at the opening words. To my beloved granddaughter, Rachel. I am proud of your kindness and strength. Outside the window, maple leaves swayed in the morning breeze. The smell of old books in the room. Grandmother's letter. Everything had been waiting in long silence, leading me to the truth. We'll get everything ready this week, Grandfather quietly announced. It's time to fulfill Margaret's final wish. I nodded. In my chest, I felt a sensation of years of questions being resolved. And a new determination was sprouting. Grandpa, the pancakes must be cold now. Grandfather smiled gently. Your pancakes are delicious even when cold. From that day, our secret preparations began. Meetings with the lawyer. Creating new documents. And most importantly, facing the truth that had been hidden for years. At night, while preparing grandfather's medicine, I read grandmother's letter over and over. Each word was filled with deep love and wisdom. Rachel. Grandfather called me before bedtime. You understood the true feelings of Margaret and me. I'm grateful. Tears glistened in grandfather's eyes. I silently gripped his warm hand. Outside the window, the full moon was quietly rising. 5 more days. The time until Mother and Jennifer's return was ticking away. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Because we had truth as our strong ally. The week passed like a dream. Grandfather and I had detailed meetings with lawyer Joseph Morrison. He was the person who had managed grandmother's will and knew all the truth. Mother and Jennifer return at 3 p.m. today. I murmured quietly while clearing away grandfather's breakfast. Outside the window, July's sunlight brightly illuminated the maple trees in the garden. Everything is ready, Rachel. Grandfather nodded with a calm expression. Now I could understand how much he had kept hidden in his heart during the more than a year he had pretended to have dementia. 2:45 p.m. The doorbell rang. Morrison here. The tall lawyer appeared with a heavy leather briefcase. Are you both ready? We nodded. The living room arrangement was all according to plan. Fresh flowers were placed in front of grandmother's portrait. Then we heard the sound of a taxi. We're home. Jennifer's bouncy voice echoed in the entrance. Tan skin in flashy tropical fashion. Mother too appeared to have thoroughly enjoyed her vacation. Oh, Rachel? You're here. Mother's voice carried its usual arrogance. However, her expression froze instantly. The unknown man sitting in the living room, and grandfather's different appearance. What's going on? Who is? Mother pointed at the lawyer. Her hand trembled slightly. Welcome back. My voice was unusually dignified. Would you please sit down? We have important matters to discuss. Did we do something wrong? Jennifer laughed nervously. It feels like we're children about to be scolded. Jennifer. Grandfather called out quietly but with authority. Sit down. At his voice, Jennifer reflexively obeyed. Mother too slowly sat on the sofa. She clutched her luxury brand bag to her chest like a shield. I have an announcement for everyone. Lawyer Morrison took out some documents. This is Mrs. Margaret Wilson's official will. Will? Mother's voice rose. But that was already. What you saw was a fabricated document. The lawyer stated calmly. I have kept the real will for these past 5 years. Grandfather stood up. His bearing was exactly that of the former university professor. Patricia, Jennifer. My dementia was an act. Jennifer's eyes widened. I was aware of your obsession with money, your attitude of disregarding the elderly, and your scheme to take over this house. Mother's face turned pale. Grandpa, we just. Be quiet. Jennifer's words were cut off by grandfather's stern command. I will read the contents of the will. Lawyer Morrison solemnly spread out the document. I, Margaret Wilson, hereby determine the disposition of all my assets as follows. Each word resonated in the heavy air. 90% of the assets to Rachel. The remaining 10% to be divided between Mother and Jennifer. And the right to sell this house, all entrusted to Rachel. This is illegal. Mother shouted. Father has dementia, his judgment. Here is William Wilson's psychiatric evaluation. The lawyer produced new documents. He received an official diagnosis from a specialist last week. His judgment is normal. Jennifer began to cry. But my Instagram. There should have been more important things than a fake life on social media. Grandfather's voice carried sadness. You both forgot that. Mother asked in a thin voice. Why only Rachel? Rachel was the only one who showed true affection. Grandfather placed his hand on my shoulder. Those who acted for money shall receive their due consequences. Mother collapsed to the floor. Jennifer desperately tried to hold back her tears. Her makeup was running down her cheeks. By the way, the lawyer added, this judgment is effective immediately. Both of you must pack your belongings and leave today. You're telling us to get out? Mother's voice trembled. Even though this is our home? No. I spoke quietly but with strong will. This is grandmother's house. And grandmother had the eye to discern what was truly important. Outside the window, the evening sky was turning red. Grandmother's portrait seemed to be quietly smiling. Mother and Jennifer headed to their respective rooms and began packing. Expensive brand items, flashy clothes, cosmetics. Everything was being packed into boxes, meaninglessly. The sound of their footsteps coming down the stairs echoed heavily. Large suitcases placed at the entrance. The door that would probably never open again. Rachel. Just before leaving, Mother turned around. For the first time, real emotion floated in her eyes. Regret? Hatred? Or? I silently saw them off. The evening breeze quietly rustled the maple leaves. You endured well. Grandfather placed his hand on my back. That warmth, along with the relief of being freed from years of burden, seeped into my heart. Grandma, did I make the right choice? Grandfather looked up at the sky and smiled gently. Margaret would surely be proud. A year had passed. After Mother and Jennifer left, the house became remarkably quiet. No more expensive perfume scents or sounds of social media photo shoots. Instead, the smell of old books and quiet conversations gently filled the space. Rachel, have you seen the newspaper? Grandfather was spreading out the local paper at the breakfast table. About Mother? I asked while pouring tea. The article was small. It reported that Patricia Wilson, once known in Greenwich's luxury real estate industry, had been charged with fraudulent transactions. At the end of her pursuit of appearances and vanity, she had apparently resorted to fake contracts and misappropriation of funds. She was always chasing appearances. Grandfather's voice carried resignation rather than sadness. Jennifer had also followed a path of downfall. Her influencer invitation to Hawaii turned out to be a fraudulent scheme. Her social media accounts faced backlash, and her followers plummeted to just a few hundred overnight. The last I heard, she was working at a small cafe in Brooklyn. I quietly shared what I'd heard from an old acquaintance. I tried to imagine her without the flashy makeup and luxury brands, just her natural face. Life requires times of learning. Grandfather smiled peacefully. Perhaps they're both in the midst of experiencing that. Our lives had changed significantly too. Using grandmother's inheritance, I opened a small clinic. Margaret Memorial Clinic, a community-based medical facility named after grandmother. Looks like we're fully booked again today. I smiled while looking at the schedule sent from reception. Earning patients' trust, that had a value that couldn't be measured in social media likes. Grandfather holds literature lectures at the clinic once a week. It's a time for dementia patients to explore Shakespeare and Austen together. His peaceful expression has regained the brilliance from his university professor days. Grandpa, what's today's lecture theme? The Taming of the Shrew. Grandfather's eyes crinkled. It's a wonderful work about the difference between appearance and essence. The old house was changing bit by bit too. Carrying on grandmother's gardening hobby, new flowers bloomed proudly in the garden. In the study, grandfather's and my books coexisted. Fresh flowers were always placed in front of grandmother's portrait in the living room. One evening, I returned home after finishing work. At the entrance, I noticed an unfamiliar envelope. It was from Mother, Patricia. Inside was a single photograph. A family photo from years ago. Mother and me, little Jennifer. And grandparents smiling kindly. On the back, one line in trembling handwriting. Please forgive me. I sighed deeply and carefully put away the envelope. Forgiveness. It's not an instant decision, but something that grows over a long time. Rachel, it's tea time. Grandfather's voice came from the stairs. I hurried to the living room. On the table was grandmother's favorite tea set. The aroma of English breakfast tea wafted through the room. Grandma's keepsake cups are lovely. When I said this, grandfather quietly nodded. Margaret knew the value of genuine things. I felt deep meaning in those words. Outside the window, the sun was quietly setting. The maple leaves shimmered golden. Bird songs decorated the peaceful evening. Grandfather slowly stood up. He quietly spoke to grandmother's portrait. Margaret, we've finally found true happiness. I silently picked up my cup. The warm tea warmed my heart as well. The precious things grandmother left behind. They weren't money or status, but the warmth of these ordinary moments. Rachel. Tomorrow will be another new day. Grandfather's voice held certain hope. I smiled and nodded. Yes, tomorrow. And beyond that. We would slowly build the true form of our family. In the night sky, the first star began to twinkle. It was like grandmother's gentle smile, watching over us from somewhere.